Okay, so when you're ready to make and design your coil pot, you're going to need a template to hold up next to your coil pot so that you can make sure that you're managing to keep the form that you initially want and design. I remember when we do coil pots, there are certain forms that don't work really well. So for my template, I don't want it really any wider than this and much taller than this. I don't want my final form to be much bigger than that. So I cut my paper to create my template on to the maximum size that I would want in any direction. So the thing I don't want to do is I don't want to turn it this way and have this be the bottom of my pot and have it come out like really steep, because what happens with coil pots is as you add coils out, this part gets too heavy and then it would start to collapse. So we don't want anything with too big of an undercut. Usually a nice clean curve. You can even do corners. I've seen people do square coil pots, in which case you wouldn't necessarily need a template. But when we're doing round coil pots and we're going to put them on a banding wheel and we want to get our coils around to make sure our pot has that same form all the way around. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw out my form as I want it to appear complete. So if I want just kind of a classic vase shape, the nice thing that this paper does is it gives me the opportunity to work out any design flaws or changes that I want to do before I get to actually constructing. So it gives me an opportunity to fix any flaws or anything like that beforehand. Now both sides may not be exactly the same as I draw them out here. In fact, this kind of bubbles in the middle a little bit more than this side does, and that's okay, right? Because this is just my rough draft of what it's going to look like. So I'm trying to get this, I almost like this side a little bit better than this side, because I like this gentle curve that I've got going here. So once I've kind of narrowed this down and I've drawn my design out, what I need to do next is I need to cut this. And this is just a piece of newsprint. So newsprint is the stuff that newspapers are printed on. It's really cheap because it's really flimsy and thin. So this isn't going to be a good template. It won't really be stiff enough to hold it up next to the pot. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut it along my positive edge. So the positive side is the part that the clay would be, and then the negative is the space around it. Okay, negative space. So negative space is the empty space around a pot, and the positive would be the pot itself. So I wanted to cut my negative out from my positive. And as I put this down on the paper on my cardstock here, my poster board, you can see kind of that general shape that I wanted. So I'm going to use this actually to cut my template. So I want to line it up. It's the same size as my other one. And I can line it up so that really it goes almost to the edge, so that I'm not really wasting a whole lot of material. Okay. And then once it's there, I'm just going to kind of trace real lightly. If you press too hard, the newsprint will bend. But I want to make sure I have that same clean, crisp shape that I had on my newsprint drawing. So I'm just going to trace this on. See, it bends real easily if you don't hold it. So I'm going to make sure I hold this tight so the edge of my pencil kind of floats along. And then I've got my line here that I can cut out. I don't need this huge piece for my template too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in maybe an inch or two, inch and a half. I'm going to draw a line there. Okay, because then this is the only part that I'm really using, and then somebody else can use this for their template. So then I'm going to cut this out. Okay, and I'm left with that negative of the pot that I created. So now I'm going to cut that out. And I want this to be as clean and smooth as a cut as I can get, because this is the one that I'm going to hold up next to the pot as I'm building it. Okay, so then I've got the positive here, which I don't need, and then the negative right here, which is the negative side of this. Right, so that when I'm making my pot, I can hold this up next to it to kind of judge that I'm getting my coils spread out and evened out into the right shape all the way around. So I'm going to keep this part. This part is, I mean, you could use this if you wanted to keep, you know, to hold up just to kind of compare. But this is the important part. This is going to be the template that you hold up to the side. So when you watch the coil pot video, you'll see me hold a template up as I smooth out and I place my coils on my coil pot. So templates are important, especially when you're doing larger objects in hand building, because they help you really align and figure out exactly what you want to do. So that's the template you're going to need and the process you should use for making that template when you're doing your coil pot.